It began on a rainy afternoon when the city streets smelled like wet stone and fading flowers, and I stood under the shade of the chai stall watching drops slide down glass and steam rise from fresh cups, and that was when she passed. She walked. Like she belonged to another season, not this one where the sky wept and the wind whispered she was draped in a light blue. Sorry, and the fabric swayed behind her like it knew it was being watched, and her hair was tied loosely, a few strands dancing freely against her cheek. But it was her scent that struck me like thunder without sound. Gentle perfume that wasn't bought. It was inherited or born of her presence, or perhaps it clung to her soul so long that it forgot how to leave. It smelled like jasmine and something deeper, something like dusk falling over forgotten villages, where windows still creak open at night and wait for a lover's whisper. I forgot the chai I had just ordered. I forgot the rain, the cold, the ache in my feet. I forgot even two breaths. She didn't look at me, not that Diaxi. Passed by with her gaze ahead, but her essence lingered like a secret that begged to be told. For the next week, I walked that same lane again and again, sometimes pretending to buy things, sometimes standing uselessly hoping she'd pass once more, and then she did this time. Her eyes met mine, brown eyes, soft but unreadable, like old poetry that offers meanings only if you ache enough to earn them. I said nothing, but my silence screamed. And maybe she heard it because she slowed just a little before walking on again. I was lost again. Her scent wrapped around my thoughts and made me forget my job, my name, my plans. I didn't know who she was, or where she lived, or whether she was married or single, or whether she even noticed how my chest burned every time she was near. All I knew was that the smell of her was not just perfume, was a story, and I had just begun reading the first line. Weeks passed, and the monsoon dried up and left behind a sky full of sharp stars and cool nights, and still I waited every day on that lane. One evening, just as the sun was falling sideways across rooftops, I saw her again, but this time she stopped. Her name, she said, was Samarand. Mine, I told her, was Ranwan. Sat near the old temple steps and talked like we had met long ago in another life. Maybe she laughed gently, like she didn't want the world to hear, and I realized her voice too carried that scent, that same trace of warmth and longing. Asked her about her perfume, and she smiled. She said it was oil her grandmother made from crushed jasmine petals and sandalwood soaked in a little memory, I think. I fell for her right there, not because of what she wore or said, but because she made even scent feel sacred. Our meetings became regular. We walked slowly along the garden wall where old vines bloomed and the world moved on without a sound. Slowly, she let me touch her hand. Then one night, as we sat too close, she leaned into me and her head touched my shoulder, and I breathed in that scent. Again, that unbearable scent that made my heart still and my thoughts blur. Closed my eyes, and in that moment I forgot every woman before her, every promise I had broken, every fear I carried. All I could feel was her beside me, warm and alive and smelling like something holy and dangerous. When I kissed her for the first time, it was not passionate, it was surrender, like I was letting go of every reason I ever told myself not to love. She whispered into my ear that she had never let anyone so close. I didn't speak. I only held her tighter, letting the scent of her fill my chest until I felt no space left for Dalsamira. Name that now tasted of jasmine and night and new beginnings. They say memory fades, but her scent never did. Even when I wake alone, I still feel her near, like a fragrance caught between time and skin. And I know no matter where life drifts, Mitha, sweet smell of her will always make me forget everything else. The world changed around us, and seasons shifted, and people moved away, and buildings rose where trees once stood, but nothing changed the way I felt when she was near. Nothing could dull the pull of that scent that wrapped around me. Every time she came close, some nights we met on the rooftop where clothes danced on wires in the wind, and the city lights blinked like curious stars, and she would rest her head against my chest, and I would close my eyes and forget even the ground below. Usi told me she was scared not of love, but of what love could take away. of what it had taken before she said her mother had loved one so deeply that it broke her when he left, and she feared the same. Fei Tai told her I was already broken before she came, and her scent, her touch, her voice was the only thing that made me feel whole again, Samira. You are not just someone I met. You are the pause in my breath, the song that plays when everything else is silent, the scent that lives inside my lungs. We never made promises, not because we didn't want to, but because some feelings are too sacred for words, but love has its own way of testing one. Morning, her uncle fell sick and her family decided to shift to another city to take care of him, and she came to me wearing that same blue sari from the first day, and her hair loose just like before. She stood in front of me and the air between us was heavy with unspoken things. She said, Rayan, I don't know how long I'll be Ganand. I said, Samira, I don't know how long I can stay sane without the smell of... Yoshi smiled and reached out and took my hand and placed something small in my palm. It was a handkerchief laced with the oil her grandmother used, a soft piece of her memory I could carry when she left the city. Felt colder, the streets emptier, the air dry and dull. I tried to go. Oni worked. I walked, I waited, and every night before sleeping, I pressed that cloth to my nose and closed my eyes, and for a few moments I was not alone. Years passed. I never met anyone else, not because I didn't have chances, but because no one else smelled like Samirano. One else made me forget then. One spring afternoon, just as the sun hung low and the air smelled faintly of dust and hope, I heard my name from behind. I turned, and there she was, older but still wrapped in the same sense. Amir couldn't move. She came closer and I breathed in, and everything that had faded in me returned. We didn't need to speak. I held her tighter than I ever had done that night as we lay together for the first time since years, though. Scent of her filled the room, filled my chest, filled every crack time had left, and I knew this was where I belonged, inside the fragrance, inside the feeling, inside the love that had waited.